So you haven't had a 106 GTI video in quite some time. You're probably wondering, have I given up? Am I being lazy, not making videos? Well, I have felt like giving up quite a few times, and I'm generally quite lazy too sometimes, so you are right there. But that's not the reason why I haven't been making videos. The reason that we haven't had any 106 updates is mainly because I've been trying to wire in my standalone ECU. Obviously, when you're wiring your standalone ECU for the first time, there's a lot of unknowns. So I've had to go through and checking, double checking, triple checking everything, reading manuals. So, you know, it takes a long time. So I don't get every single day free to myself, so I got to do what I can. Anyway, after days and days and days and days of work, I finished the loom basically with the help of my friend Sparkplug Steve, and we fit the ECU, the ME221 ECU. We've loaded the base map on, and basically the car, well, it was dead, nothing at all. So we tweaked around with some of the settings, and we couldn't really get it to start. The trigger offset on a 106 GTI is 277 or 97, depending how your coils are wired. So obviously we know the base settings because we have a base map of a 106, but it just would not start. After a long time, and I'm talking days now, we got it to splutter and start for about a couple of minutes, and we thought maybe the car's just a lot harder to map than, you know, we originally thought. Excuse me. Get in somewhere. What's this, like the third day? Come on, put it on there, man. Whoa. Yeah, we thought maybe mapping's harder than, you know, we give it credit for, which obviously it is. It's a very complicated thing, but just to start a car on a base map, we thought maybe we underestimated the difficulty of that. At first we started to suspect injectors. We thought maybe the injector drivers, there was some sort of fault there, but we later diagnosed that they're actually fine. Also with the spark plugs, we did get a spark initially. It was a weak and intermittent, but we thought maybe that's just the way we were testing it. So we didn't really have any issues there. And we were thinking, you know, we're getting air, we're getting spark, we're getting fuel. What is the problem? We could not figure it out to save our life. Anyway, after days and days, one day I just thought, you know what? We haven't had it started since you know, a while ago, and we haven't really changed anything on the map. So why isn't it starting? I tried asking for help on the Facebook group of the ECU manufacturer, and I didn't get many responses. I mean, people trying to help obviously, but there's only so much they can do. So I was getting comments from one of the members of staff, I won't mention who, just basically saying, you know, come and trailer it, pay a professional and you'll be happy, sort of thing. But that's not really the point of the build. And when I bought the ECU, the sales team promised me that I'd have a base map and I could get my car started, because I want a peace of mind of knowing before I spend £200 having my car trailered to a dyno, then paying £300-400 to have it dynoed, I want to know that everything's starting and running fine and I've wired it in and there's no oil leaks. So yeah, I was refusing really to just get my credit card out and go for it, you know, because that's not really the way, that's not the point of this build. The whole point of this build is doing things yourself, you know, within reason, and just trying to be efficient really. So a long story short, I diagnosed the fact that we weren't getting a spark. I then diagnosed, I was told by the ECU company that it was the coil pack. I knew it wasn't the coil pack, because I was diagnosing at the terminal, the connector that the coil pack goes to. and I could see that the ECU was not grounding the connection. So the ECU basically controls the ground that comes from the coil pack, and they'll switch it on and off, you know, in milliseconds to ground out the spark plugs causing a spark. Well, it come out after, you know, quite some time really, that the ECU had been shipped with the wrong firmware. So what happened was whoever manufactures the ECUs on behalf of the ECU company, obviously they must own the circuit board and the rights and the design and everything, but they must outsource production. Whoever they outsourced production to, they'd actually flashed the wrong firmware on my particular ECU. So when I put my ECU in, my coil pack is sending 12 volts of high amp current basically to the ECU, and the ECU will ground it out, as I just said, you know, for like a 3 millisecond ground, on off, on off, on off, to control spark plugs. Well, it had an inverted coil firmware on it. So what that basically means is an inverted coil is, well, it's the other way around. Instead of grounding out a live, it sort of sends power when it needs a spark rather than grounding it out. So it sends power to a coil pack. So that would be the case on an MX-5 as far as I can see. So obviously you got 12 volts of 20 amp, whatever it is, fused cable coming in to the ECU. Then you've got the ECU trying to send 12 volts back up to the coil pack. Well, it's no surprise that the little chips, tiny little chips about that big, that were supposed to be dealing with that, well, they fried basically. And they diagnosed that, as I'll show you in a video. So this morning I am going to be connecting into the mappers. They're going to reflash the ECU to my software. They're going to reflash the software, rather, the firmware, to my ECU, and hopefully the ECU survived. If not, well, they're going to have to provide a replacement. I think it's a waste of time, and the ECU has already killed itself, because, well, they told me that it would almost definitely be blown up. But we're going to go with it anyway. If and when it doesn't start, then we'll take it from there. I've just finished having a team viewer speak, whatever they call it, with Motorsport Electronics. We done a spark test, and yeah, it's not working. They actually said I could keep this ECU and they're going to send me out another one tomorrow. The ignition drivers are gone. They have provided me with a replacement, and it was no fuss. As soon as they realised I wasn't being stupid, no fuss replacement, and it was lightning fast as well. And, you know, to be honest, quite apologetic too, you know. So I haven't got any grudges there. So yeah, they basically said keep the old ECU, the one that's blown, and they'll send me out a new one. So yeah, that's basically all I wanted to share with you today, and hopefully you find it helpful. And if you need any questions, you know, feel free to message me. Would I recommend Motorsport Electronics as a company? Well, I don't know. It's hard to say. I've never really had any dealings with other companies. I feel like you're in good hands to a degree. You're not going to be left, you know, with a faulty part. I've experienced their warranty sort of procedure, and, you know, they are trustworthy, and that's a big part of, you know, buying an ECU. A big thing that was on my mind when purchasing an ECU is, like, you know, what if it's dead when it arrives? You know, we're talking a lot of money when we look at these ECUs, you know, like about 700 quid, I think, something like that. So obviously there's a bit of concern when buying an ECU. What if it's dead? You know, you don't want to go buying any old ECU off any old website, because what if, you know, what if it breaks? Like, or like in my case, mine did. Do you want a company that's going to wriggle out and sort of come in with some clause saying, you know, well, you should have known? Because, you know, how was I supposed to know if the wrong firmware was on there? But obviously they've showed their true colours in this way, and they've provided a replacement. But in the same way, if you are just an idiot who basically doesn't want to read manuals and the documents that they've put online, and you want people to just answer your questions and do it for you, you know, asking them basic questions that they've written documents on their website for, then they're not gonna obviously have much patience for you. If you're asking them, you know, what is the brown wire for on my wiring loom, they'll just tell you to read the manual, and they probably won't answer you. But that's your own fault, really. So I suppose I would recommend them in that way. But yeah, they're not going to map your car for you and wire it in for free over Facebook. That's not really obviously they got a business to run. But then in the same nutshell, they provide all the information you need, any information you need to wire this car in, to even map it as well. I mean, everything I've done, I've mapped this car now at wastegate pressure, and I've done a couple of pulls in it. I didn't know anything about mapping 3 or 4 days ago at all. And everything I know now to get it this far and making pulls at half a bar a boost is basically from the information on their website that they've provided for, you know, users of their product. So obviously with any company you get pros and cons. So I'd say the pros, good warranty. I do trust them in that regard. I know that if I was to buy future products, you know, I'd have trust in them. They've got good documentation on their website. They've got a full wiring guide. They've got guides on how to flash your firmware, how to check your firmware, what firmware does what, you know. They've got the tuning software. They've got a guide for that, telling you what every single setting does, even how to like set it up. And not only that, they've actually got a mapping guide as well, a comprehensive guide, how to map your car, how to get the best out of it, you know. So this is like gold, you know. This is information that I really want, like, you know, soaking all the information up. You can't get this information anywhere else. So they're definitely the pros. If you're willing to put the work in, you pretty much could buy this ECU, fit it to almost any car, and get it mapped yourself. Also, they've got a Facebook group with some users on there that are quite helpful. But then cons, when I originally made my order, they didn't have the correct loom, and they didn't let me know, and I was wondering what was happening for a while. And I had to keep on to them and eventually change my order. But then again, that's not their fault. That's whoever's sending in the looms. They didn't have the stock to send out. So hopefully that's helped you basically on to see why I haven't made any videos, my trouble with the ECU, whose fault it was, and whether it was dealt with. As you can see, it was dealt with. And yeah, the next video will be up pretty much immediately, me boosting. Cheers.